Hey warriors, welcome back to the channel. You ever notice how the people you've helped the most are the ones who respect you the least? The friend you lent money to, who now avoids you. The family member you supported, who resents you for it. The colleague you mentored, who's now competing with you. You thought generosity would make them loyal. You thought giving would make them grateful. You thought helping them when they were down would mean they'd be there when you needed them. But here's what actually happened. The more you gave, the less they respected you. The more you helped, the more entitled they became. The more generous you were, the more they expected. And now they don't see you as someone who helped them. They see you as someone who's obligated to keep helping them. And here's the part that's going to make you angry. They're using your own generosity to control you. Someone asks for help. You want to say no. You need that money. You need that time. You need that energy for yourself. But then comes the guilt. I thought you cared about me. You have so much. I'm just asking for a little. After everything we've been through, you're really going to say no, and you fold. Every single time. Not because you want to give, but because saying no feels cruel. Because you've been conditioned to believe that protecting your resources makes you selfish, that having boundaries makes you greedy, that prioritizing yourself makes you a bad person. If you're starting to see how your generosity has been weaponized against you, subscribe now, because what comes next is how to protect your wealth and still maintain power. And it only works if you're willing to let people think you're less generous than you are. And they know this. They know exactly which buttons to push. They know that guilt controls you. They know that you'll sacrifice yourself to avoid feeling like you're not generous enough. They know you'd rather bankrupt yourself than face the accusation of being selfish. And while you're busy depleting everything you have to prove you're a good person, they're extracting without reciprocating, demanding without appreciating, and the moment you have nothing left to give, they're gone. No gratitude, no loyalty, no thank you for everything you did, just resentment that you stopped, and a search for the next person they can drain. Machiavelli warned about this 500 years ago. He said the generous prince exhausts his wealth trying to maintain his reputation for generosity, and when he can no longer afford to give, his people hate him anyway, not for what he gave, but for what he can no longer provide. And you're living that pattern right now. You're draining yourself to be generous, and the people you're helping don't love you for it. They resent you when you helped them because it reminded them they were weak, and they resent you now because you're not giving enough. You can't win, not by being more generous. You've already lost by being generous at all. Stay till the end, because I'm about to show you why your generosity is making you poor, powerless, and despised, and how strategic scarcity creates more loyalty, more respect, and more power than giving ever could. Let me show you exactly how this trap works. You have resources. Could be money, could be time, could be connections, could be skills. Whatever it is, you have something valuable, and people notice. They notice who has resources and who's willing to share them, and they start testing. First test is small. Can I borrow 20 bucks? Can you help me move this weekend? Can you introduce me to that person you know? Small asks, easy to say yes to, and you do, because you're a good person, because helping feels good, because saying no to something small feels petty. And what happens? They come back, bigger ask this time. Can I borrow $500? Can you help me with this project that's going to take weeks? Can you use your reputation to vouch for me? And you hesitate, because this is more than you're comfortable giving. This is going to cost you something real. But then the guilt comes. You helped me before. I thought we were cool. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. I'd do the same for you. And you fold. You give. Not because you want to. Because refusing feels like you're abandoning them. Because you've already established yourself as someone who helps. And backing out now feels like betrayal. So you give, and they take. And here's what you don't see coming. They don't feel grateful. They feel entitled. Because in their mind, you have plenty. You helped them before, without issue. So clearly you can afford have resources they don't, so obviously you should share, and every time you give, you're reinforcing this belief. You're training them that asking you for things is not only acceptable, it's expected. You're not building a relationship based on mutual exchange. You're building a dependency where they extract and you provide. And the moment you try to stop providing, you're not just saying no, you're violating the contract they think you signed. Let me give you a specific example. You lend a friend $3,000. They need it for rent. They promise they'll pay you back in 3 months. You believe them. You want to help. 3 months pass. No money. No mention of it. You bring it up. Oh yeah, I'm still struggling. Can you give me a couple more months? You say yes, because demanding repayment feels cruel when they're still struggling. 6 months pass. Still nothing. You bring it up again. And now they're annoyed. I said I'll pay you back when I can. Why are you pressuring me? I thought you were my friend. And suddenly, you're the bad guy. You helped them. You gave them money when they needed it. And now you're the villain for expecting them to honor their word. This is the inversion. This is what Machiavelli saw. Generosity doesn't create gratitude. It creates resentment and entitlement. Because the act of receiving help puts people in a position of weakness. It reminds them they needed you. It shows them they couldn't handle it alone. And people don't like being reminded they're weak. So instead of gratitude, they feel shame. And shame converts to resentment. They resent you for seeing them at their lowest. They resent you for being the one who had resources when they didn't. They resent you for the power imbalance that your generosity created. And the only way they can feel better about themselves is to either avoid you entirely or reframe the narrative where you become the bad guy. So they avoid you, or they tell people you're holding the money over their head, or they find reasons why they don't actually owe you. You have so much, you don't even need that money. I would have figured it out without you anyway. You only helped because it made you feel good about yourself. They're rewriting the history to turn your generosity into something ugly, so they don't have to feel indebted. And you're sitting there confused and hurt, wondering how helping someone turned you into their enemy. This is the pattern. This is what happens when you're generous without strategy. You help people. They resent you for it. You give resources. They feel entitled to more. You expect reciprocity. They rewrite the narrative to avoid owing you. And you end up poorer, weaker, and surrounded by people who take from you and give nothing back. And the worst part, you blame yourself. You think maybe I shouldn't have expected repayment. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let it go. And that self-blame is exactly what keeps the cycle going. Because the moment you accept that generosity shouldn't expect anything in return, is the moment you become an infinite resource for people to exploit. Now let me show you the mechanics of how they manipulate you. They use guilt. They use obligation. They use your own self-image against you. Someone asks for help. You want to say no. Your resources are limited. Your time is valuable. Your energy is finite. But saying no triggers guilt. If I say no, I'm being selfish. If I say no, they'll think I don't care. If I say no, I'm not living up to who I want to be. So you say yes. Not because giving serves you, because saying no would make you feel like a bad person. And they know this. They know that your self-image as a generous, caring, helpful person is the lever they can pull to extract whatever they want. So they pull it. I thought you were different. I thought I could count on you. I guess I was wrong about you. These aren't statements of disappointment. These are manipulation tactics designed to trigger your guilt and force compliance. They're weaponizing your desire to be a good person. They're using your values against you, and it works, because you'd rather deplete yourself than face the possibility that you're not as generous as you think you are. Let me give you another scenario. You're successful. You've built wealth. You've worked hard. You've made sacrifices. And now you have resources. And the moment people find out, the asks start coming. Family members who never called before suddenly need help. Friends who disappeared when you were were struggling suddenly reappear when you're successful. People you barely know start pitching you their problems disguised as opportunities for you to help. And every ask comes wrapped in guilt. Family helps family. Real friends show up for each other. You're blessed, you should share your blessings. And here's the trap. If you say yes, you establish yourself as someone who gives, and the asks will never stop. They'll escalate. They'll multiply. Because word spreads, he helped me, he'll help you too. And soon you're not just helping one person, you're helping their whole network. And none of them see it as your choice to give. They see it as your obligation to share, because you have more than them. And in their mind, that means you owe them. But if you say no, if you protect your resources, then you're selfish, you're greedy, you've changed, you've forgotten where you came from. You think you're better than everyone else, and they'll make sure everyone knows it. They'll tell people you're stingy. They'll tell people you don't care about anyone but yourself. They'll paint you as the villain, so they can be the victim. And your reputation, the reputation you thought generosity would build, gets destroyed anyway. Not because you weren't generous, because you weren't generous enough. So tell me, how do you win this game? If being generous makes people resent you and expect more, and if protecting your resources makes people hate you and call you selfish, how do you win? The answer is, you don't play the game they're playing. You play a different game. You play the Machiavellian game, where generosity isn't a moral obligation, it's a strategic tool, where giving isn't about being liked, it's about creating leverage, where resources aren't shared freely, they're deployed carefully to create specific outcomes. Machiavelli wrote, "There is nothing wastes so rapidly as liberality, for even whilst you exercise it, you lose the power to do so, and so become either poor or despised." Let me break that down. When you're generous without limits, you're spending resources, and spending depletes, and depletion leads to one of two outcomes. You become poor, or you become despised. You become poor if you keep giving until you have nothing left. You become despised if you stop giving because people expected you to continue. Either way, you lose. The only winning move is to never be so generous that depletion becomes inevitable. So what does strategic generosity look like? It looks like scarcity. It looks like selectivity. It looks like making people earn your help instead of giving it freely. It looks like creating obligation when you do give instead of expecting nothing in return. It looks like being known as someone who can help but chooses not to most of the time, because scarcity creates value. When you're always available, your help means nothing. When you're rarely available, your help means everything. Let me show you how this works in practice. Someone asks for help. Instead of immediately saying yes or no, you pause. You ask questions. What have you tried already? Who else have you asked? What's your plan for making sure this doesn't happen again? You're not being helpful yet. You're assessing. You're determining whether this person deserves your resources, or if they're just looking for the easiest solution, which is getting someone else to solve their problem for them. And here's what happens. Most people can't answer those questions because they haven't tried anything. They haven't asked anyone else. They don't have a plan. They just know that asking you is easier than figuring it out themselves. And when they can't answer your questions, you have all the information you need. This person isn't looking for help. They're looking for extraction. And you say no, not with guilt, not with apology, just "I don't think I can help with this," and you move on. But some people can answer those questions. They've tried multiple things. They've exhausted other options. They have a plan. They're not looking for you to solve their problem. They're looking for a specific resource you have that will help them solve it themselves. Those people you consider helping, not automatically, but you consider it because they've demonstrated that your help won't be wasted, that they're not just extracting, they're actually trying to build something. And when you do help, when you decide someone has earned it, you help strategically. You don't give them everything they asked for. You give them less. You give them exactly enough to see if and investments require returns. And watch what happens. The people who were just looking for extraction, they don't like these terms. They wanted you to give freely, with no strings attached. And when you don't, they disappear. They find someone else who will. And that's perfect. You've just filtered out the parasites, without them taking anything from you. But the people who actually needed help, and were willing to work for it, they accept your terms. They honor them. And when they do, you've created something valuable, a relationship based on mutual exchange, instead of one-sided extraction. Let me give you a real example. You're approached by someone who wants to start a business and needs capital. Old you would have either said yes and handed over money, or said no and felt guilty. New you asks questions. What's your business plan? What have you already invested in this? What happens if it fails? And if they can't answer, you say no. But if they can answer, if they've clearly thought this through and already put their own resources at risk, you consider it. And you structure it as an investment, not a gift. I'll invest this amount in exchange for this percentage of equity. Now you're not being generous. You're being strategic. You're deploying resources in a way that creates returns instead of just depletion. And here's the beautiful part. When you structure it this way, when you make help conditional and strategic instead of free and automatic, people respect you more, not less. They don't see you as an easy target. They see you as someone whose favor must be earned, whose resources are valuable because they're scarce, whose help means something because it's rare. You've gone from being a fountain anyone can drink from to being a well that only the worthy can access. And that shift from abundant availability to strategic scarcity, that's what creates power. Now let me address what you're thinking. But this sounds cold. This sounds like I'm keeping score. This sounds like I'm being selfish. And yes, it does. Because you've been conditioned to believe that strategic resource management is selfishness, that protecting what's yours is greed, that expecting returns on your investments is transactional. But here's the question you need to ask. Has being generous worked for you? Has giving freely made you wealthy? Has helping everyone made you powerful? Has expecting nothing in return made people loyal? Or are you broke, exhausted, and surrounded by people who only contact you when they need something? You know the answer. Your generosity has made you weak. Your availability has made you exploitable. Your refusal to expect reciprocity has made people entitled to your resources. And the people telling you that protecting yourself is selfish, they're the ones benefiting from your depletion. They're the ones who need you to stay generous so they can keep extracting. Of course, they don't want you to become strategic. Strategic people can't be manipulated. Strategic people protect their resources. Strategic people say no without guilt, and that makes them useless to parasites. Machiavelli understood that the generous prince faces a dilemma. To maintain his reputation for generosity, he must give constantly, which depletes his treasury. And once depleted, he must tax his people heavily to replenish it, which makes them hate him. So the prince who appears generous actually creates his own destruction, but the prince who appears miserly, who protects his resources, who gives rarely and strategically, preserves his wealth, and in times of need, when crisis comes, he has resources to deploy without burdening his people, and they love him for it, not because he was always giving, but because he gave when it mattered most, because his scarcity made his generosity meaningful. This is the shift you need to make, from constant availability to strategic deployment, from giving freely to giving conditionally, from being generous with everyone to being generous with the worthy few. This isn't about becoming cruel, it's about becoming smart. It's about understanding that unlimited generosity is just unlimited vulnerability, and unlimited vulnerability gets exploited every time. If you're seeing how this changes everything about how you handle resources, hit that like button. It tells me you're ready to protect what's yours, and it pushes this message to others who are still being drained through weaponized guilt. Let me show you what happens when you actually implement this. When you start saying no without guilt. When you start making help conditional. When you start treating your resources as scarce instead of abundant. First, some people get angry. The people who were benefiting from your unlimited generosity suddenly can't access you the way they used to, and instead of respecting your boundaries, they attack them. They call you selfish. They say you've changed. They tell you money has made you greedy. They weaponize every guilt trigger they can find to force you back into the role of endless giver. Don't engage, don't defend, don't explain, just stay consistent. Because their anger is proof that you're doing it right. They're angry because the extraction just got harder. They're angry because they can't manipulate you as easily. They're angry because you've stopped letting guilt control your resources. And that anger, that's not your problem. That's their adjustment to the new reality where you're not an infinite resource. Second, some people leave. The people whose entire relationship with you was based on what they could get from you. They drift away. They stop calling. They stop reaching out. They find someone else who's easier to extract from. And this hurts, because you thought these were real relationships. You thought these people cared about you, but they didn't. They cared about your utility. They cared about what you could do for them. And the moment you stopped doing it, they had no use for you. And that's painful, but it's also clarifying, because you just learned who was real and who was transactional. And clearing out the transactional people makes space for the real ones. Third, new people respect you differently. When you show up as someone who protects their resources, who gives conditionally, who expects reciprocity, you attract different people. Not people looking for handouts, people looking for partnerships. Not people looking to extract, people looking to exchange. Not people who need you to solve their problems, people who solve their own problems and want to collaborate with someone who does the same. And these relationships, these are the ones that actually build wealth, power, and mutual respect. Let me give you a professional example. You're known in your industry. People reach out asking to pick your brain, or asking for introductions, or asking for advice. You said yes to everyone. You gave your time freely. You made introductions without asking for anything. You shared everything you knew with anyone who asked. And what happened? Your time got consumed. Your network got diluted. Your knowledge got extracted and used to compete with you. And nobody thanked you, because free advice is worth what it costs. Nothing. New you operates differently. Someone asks to pick your brain. I charge for consulting. Here's my rate. Someone asks for an introduction. Tell me why this connection is valuable to me and to them. Convince me this is worth my reputation. Someone asks for advice. I can refer you to resources that helped me. If you want personalized guidance, that's a service I provide. You've just put a price on your value, and watch what happens. The people who are just looking for free extraction disappear, but the people who actually value your expertise, they pay. They respect your time. They honor your rates, because they understand that valuable things cost money. And here's the shift. When people pay you for your knowledge, they use it. When you give it for free, they ignore it. Because psychologically, people value what they pay for and dismiss what's free. By charging, you're not just protecting your time, you're ensuring that the people who receive your knowledge actually implement it. You've filtered for serious people and filtered out time wasters. That's not selfish, that's strategic. Now let's talk about family, because this is where it gets hardest. You have family members who need help, and the guilt here is multiplied. Family takes care of family. Blood is thicker than water. You're supposed to help your own, and you've been conditioned to believe that refusing to help family makes you a bad person. So you help, you give money, you provide housing, you create opportunities, and they take and take and take and give nothing back. Here's what you need to understand. Family doesn't get a free pass to drain you. Biology doesn't obligate you to bankrupt yourself. Being related doesn't mean you owe unlimited resources. And the family members telling you otherwise, they're the ones benefiting from that narrative. They're the ones who need you to believe that family equals sign obligation so they can keep extracting without reciprocating. But here's the truth. Real family doesn't drain you. Real family exchanges. Real family gives back. Real family respects your boundaries. And the family that only shows up when they need something, that's not family. That's just people who share your DNA and know how to manipulate you through guilt. So you implement the same framework. Someone asks for help. You assess. What have you tried? What's your plan? How will you make sure you don't need this help again? And if they can't answer, you say no. Even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Because family who can't be bothered to try before asking you to solve their problems, they're not looking for help. They're looking for a bailout. And bailing people out doesn't help them. It enables them. It teaches them that they don't have to be responsible, because you'll always be there to fix it. And that's not love. That's codependency. And codependency destroys everyone involved. But when you do help family, when someone demonstrates they've tried, they have a plan, they're not just looking for extraction, you help strategically. You help in ways that empower them to solve future problems themselves, instead of creating dependency. You teach them to fish, instead of giving them fish. You invest in their growth, instead of funding their dysfunction. And you make it clear, this isn't infinite, this is conditional. This is based on you honoring your commitments and using this help to actually improve. Because that's real help. That's help that creates strength, instead of dependency. Let me show you the long-term consequence of strategic scarcity versus unlimited generosity. Unlimited generosity path. You give to everyone who asks. You're known as generous. Your resources deplete. You become stressed trying to maintain the giving. You start to resent the people you're helping because they're not grateful and they keep asking for more. You eventually run out of resources. You can no longer give. The people you've been helping turn on you. They're angry you stopped. They spread rumors that you're selfish now. You're left broke, exhausted, and surrounded by people who hate you for no longer providing what they felt entitled to. You've destroyed yourself financially and socially through generosity. Strategic scarcity path. You give rarely and conditionally. You're known as selective. Your resources accumulate. You're not stressed because you're not overextended. You don't resent anyone because you only help people who've earned it and who reciprocate. Your resources grow. When you do give, it means something. People value your help because it's rare. They honor the terms because they know you won't give again if they don't. You build a network of high-value people who exchange rather than extract. You accumulate wealth, power, and genuine respect from people who understand strategic relationship management. You've built power through scarcity. Which path do you want? Be honest, because you can't have both. You can't be unlimited in your generosity and unlimited in your resources. Giving depletes. That's math. The only question is whether you'll deplete yourself maintaining a reputation for generosity that nobody actually respects, or whether you'll protect your resources and build actual power through scarcity. Now let me give you the framework for how to say no without guilt, because this is where most people break. They understand the logic, they see the pattern, they know they're being drained. But when the moment comes to say no, the guilt overwhelms them, and they fold. So here's how you build immunity to guilt-based manipulation. First, recognize that guilt is a tool being used against you. Someone makes you feel guilty for saying no. That's not your conscience. That's their manipulation. They're using your values against you. They're weaponizing your desire to be a good person. And the moment you recognize it as manipulation instead of moral failure, it loses power. You're not being selfish. You're being manipulated into feeling selfish. There's a difference. Second, understand that saying no is not Not I won't, not I don't want to, just I can't, because can't is final. It's not negotiable, it doesn't invite argument, and you don't owe an explanation, you don't owe a reason, you don't owe justification for protecting your resources. I can't help with this is a complete sentence. Use it, practice it, get comfortable with the discomfort of saying it, because that discomfort is just guilt, trying to make you fold, and you're not folding anymore. Fourth, let people be disappointed. This is the hardest part. Someone asks for help, you say no, they're disappointed, they're upset, maybe they're angry, and every fiber of your being wants to fix that, wants to make them feel better, wants to give them what they want, so they're not upset anymore. Don't let them be disappointed. Their disappointment is not your emergency. Their upset is not your responsibility. Their anger at you for having boundaries is not something you need to fix. Let them feel it. Let them process it. Let them learn that you're not someone who folds under emotional pressure. Because if you give in to fix their disappointment, you've just taught them that emotional manipulation works, and they'll use it again, and again, and again, and again. Fifth, redirect instead of rescue. Someone asks for help. Instead of saying yes or no, redirect. Have you tried this resource? Have you talked to this person? Have you looked into this solution? You're not solving their problem. You're pointing them toward potential solutions. This does two things. It shows you're not completely cutting them off. You're willing to help them help themselves, and it filters for whether they actually want help, or whether they just want you to do it for them. If they follow your redirection and try those things, maybe you help more later. If they ignore your redirection and keep asking you to just do it for them, you know they're looking for extraction, not help. Implement these 5 steps. Practice them. Get comfortable with them. Because the first few times you do this, it's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel cruel. It's going to feel selfish. That's the conditioning fighting back. That's the guilt trying to reassert control. Push through it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Freedom from being drained. Freedom from resentment. Freedom from the cycle of giving until you're empty and hated anyway. Machiavelli wrote that it's better for the prince to be feared than loved if he cannot be both. And while fear might seem harsh, what he meant was this: love is conditional on feelings, and feelings change. But fear, respect for boundaries, understanding that violation carries cost, that's based on calculation, and calculation is more reliable than emotion. When people love you, they might betray you when feelings fade. But when people respect your boundaries, when they understand that extracting from you has consequences, they'll honor those boundaries even when they don't love you. That's more stable. That's more sustainable. That's more protective of your resources and your power. So stop trying to be loved through generosity. Start being respected through boundaries. Stop trying to be liked through availability. Start being valued through scarcity. Stop trying to prove you're a good person through giving. Start protecting your resources through strategic saying no. Because good people who give everything away end up with nothing, and strategic people who protect their resources end up with power. And power, real power, doesn't come from how much you give. It comes from how much you control. You can't save everyone. You can't help everyone. You can't give to everyone. And trying to do so doesn't make you a good person. It makes you a depleted person. It makes you a weak person. It makes you a person who's one crisis away from having nothing, while the people you helped have moved on to their next target. So stop giving freely. Stop helping automatically. Stop sacrificing yourself to maintain a reputation for generosity that doesn't actually create respect or loyalty. Start being strategic. Start being selective. Start being scarce. Start making your help valuable by making it rare. Start creating obligation by making help conditional. Start protecting your resources like they're the finite, valuable, power-generating assets they actually preserves his resources and deploys them when they matter most. The unlimited giver ends up poor and despised. The selective giver ends up powerful and respected. The person who can't say no ends up with nothing. The person who says no strategically ends up with everything. You've been warned. 500 years ago, Machiavelli warned about this, and you're living the consequence of ignoring that warning. You're broke because you were too generous. You're exhausted because you were too available. You're surrounded by takers because you couldn't say no, and the people you helped, they're not grateful. They're resentful that you stopped or entitled to you continuing. If you're ready to protect your wealth and build power through strategic scarcity, subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel is for people who understand that unlimited generosity is unlimited vulnerability. Drop a comment telling me which guilt manipulation tactic you're going to stop responding to. Share this with someone who's still being drained through weaponized generosity. Because the world needs fewer people bankrupting themselves to prove they're good, and more people who understand that protecting your resources isn't selfish, it's survival. So take the warning seriously this time. Never be too generous. Protect your wealth. Control your resources. Make help conditional. Create scarcity. Build power through strategic giving instead of destroying yourself through unlimited generosity. Because the only difference between people who build wealth and people who stay poor isn't how much they make, it's how much they protect. And you've been bleeding resources through generosity while wondering why you never get ahead. Stop bleeding, start protecting, start building, and never ever be too generous again.